take the information that was provided to you in these handouts, if you open this booklet up, it'll show you various areas in Yukon. The only thing that we're asking is that my wife and I be treated as everyone else has been treated, and not get any favoritism. But if you go through these 1 through 8, you'll see the pictures at Northwest 10th and Cornwell. Now that is where our property is located. That you'll see the diagram where it's marked yellow. You'll see the property across the street that is next to the interstate. That first picture is actually the property. There's some oil wells setting on. You can see the interstate going by. My understanding is that property has been sold to OnQ, and I'm assuming they're putting an OnQ in there. You'll see the oil wells. That's directly across the street from our property to the south. You turn the page, you'll see the Bank of Commerce across the street from our lot. You'll see the Homeland sign where their property abuts up to a neighborhood, which is, I believe, Parkland 1. You'll see Homeland Drive, which is right next to residential property. Homeland's open 24 hours a day. You'll see another drive. You flip the picture on that, you'll see the back of Homeland where they have their trash receptacles right next to property owned by homeowners. And then the last picture in that section 1 is a pad that's being developed. It's catty corner from our property. I don't know what they're going to do with that yet, but that looks like it's going to be developed. And again, you understand the property across the street to the south is Oklahoma City. So I'm on the very south border of Yukon. I'll go through this real fast. You have property that is number 2, 10th and Mustang Road, which includes Stone Mill, which houses over $400,000, right up next to the new John Nail development, commercial C3. And you can see the Vandermont, Ranchwood, Highway 66, Cornwell, and Vandermont. Now, if I could show you a zoning map that was dated a year or two ago, but my understanding is it's pretty much the same now. And if you look at the red, that's C3. And if you look right down here at the bottom, this little black circle, that's our property. You look to the east, that's where the C3 is, up where John Nail is doing, development. And then all the yellow and the brown is C1 and C2, which I understand is basically the same, it's housing. You go on up on the east side, you have C3 up here at, I guess it's called Yukon Parkway now. That's where the new Walmart neighborhood grocery, I think, has been approved. You've got housing all to the back of that C3. If you go from Yukon Parkway all the way over to Cornwell, and again, this is the north side of Yukon, all of that property along the north side of 66 is C3, and it butts up to residential property. You have the downtown, which my understanding has been developed a long time, but you do have business uses right up to residential property. You go over to the west side of town, you have C3, which is butts up to the C2. The blue is R3, which is more like apartments, duplexes, and you go back into the inner part, and let's say the intersection of Cornwell and Vandermont. You have C3 where there's a barber shop. Behind it is residential. They even have a chain link fence there for side fence. See if I got my right to residential property, which is R1, which is yellow. Across the street, you have Conoco gas station and 24-hour car wash, which is right up next to the retirement village. Across the street from my property to the west, you have Bank of Commerce, and again, you have Homeland. When I bought this property 11 years ago, my wife and I had a dream that we wanted to put a law office there, and she's a barber, and she wanted to maybe have a small barber shop. And if you don't know, that particular intersection sits on kind of a hill, and it looks back to the east, and you can actually get a really good view of the Oklahoma City skyline. So my intention was to maybe put a half story or something up a little higher to take advantage of that view with the conference room and overlooking the city of downtown from afar. I worked on this property a lot. I bought it with the planning commission. I was here 11 years ago. Joe Sewell was the commissioner. I bought it with the intention of putting that law office in there. My wife and I have 4 daughters. And for the first 2 years, I spent money and time with architects, with engineers, with builders, and not having gone through fatherhood before, and 3 of my girls were under the age of being a teenager, all of a sudden we realized we got to spend all this money on these kids. I mean, we're going to have to put this lot on the back burner. We've got cars for them to buy, we've got proms, we've got college, and so we honestly couldn't afford to do anything on the lot at that time. So we decided we can't use it. I mean, sure, we could use the funds. So we hired a realtor. I had a realtor named Carl Archinaco that I've known for a long time. So I let him list it. We had one gentleman that was interested, and that was last July. And that was also when our listing agreement was up. But I want to make sure I tell you this because you'll understand where I'm coming from on this. That was the month or the week that in the paper, this 75 acres over south of 10th towards Mustang Road was in the paper about being developed. And so I looked at my wife and I said, you know, I didn't think this was going to happen in our lifetime, but it looks like it's being developed. You know, let's not relist this. Let's try to develop our lot ourselves. So we start working. I go to franchise shows. I talk to different franchises, and I had one gentleman that continued to contact me about selling the property. And that ended up not working out. And so that's when I told Thomas Andy Dameron, Mr. and Ms. Oden, that I want to develop this. That's when they wouldn't meet with us, so I filed the application. I want to thank Mr. Hort and all of his help, Mr. Johnson, for all the questions. I'm not a developer. I'm an attorney, but I've been to the planning commission. This is my second time. So I'm kind of feeling my way along through this. But my understanding is that Yukon has a developmental plan, and I think they've had it for a number of years, but the last one was in like 1995, and they made some amendments. But I believe that this property, because of the location with the interstate right next to it, with Northwest 10th being developed right next to it, if an on-queue goes across the street, which I'm understanding they're 24 hours, they go in right across the street, then I want to develop my lot. I don't want to sell it. So the information in that letter is incorrect. It's not for sale right now. I asked Mr. Dameron and Ms. Oden, I said, well, you know, why are you opposed to me? I mean, I already have the plat. I mean, I'm governed by the ordinances. You know, I can only build a certain place on the final plat. You know, the ordinances say I can only have it the height, a certain height. I have to have a certain number of parking spaces depending on the side of my building. Why are you opposed to this? It just gives me a chance to have more uses to put more than one, maybe a second little business, it gives me more of a chance to have more uses to lease it. All they could say is there's too many uses in C3. This property is so small. It's like 2/3 of an acre. I mean, all the three C3 uses, most of them I can't do. I mean, if you look at what the uses are, I'm very limited. The only thing that does help me with is I have some background experience in food service business. So if I wanted to put something in like City Bites or something like that, then C3 gives me that use. If I want to have a State Farm agent in the next slot next to it, then it gives me that possibility. So you have to look at the C3 uses, but most of them, this property's not big enough to do. I mean, I can't put a Walmart in here. I mean, I can't hardly put anything in here. The building would probably be 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. But the rest of those photos that are listed on there, that gives you the information that what the city has done for other people, okay? Again, I don't want to be treated with any more favoritism. We lived here a long time. We love Yukon. We want it to look pretty, and whatever we do, we will make sure that happens. I'd like to let my neighbors come up and talk, and I'd like to see exactly why they're opposed, what use they're concerned about, and then I'd like the opportunity to maybe say a couple of responses to that.
Sir, I'll run the meeting if you don't mind.
Okay, yes, sir.
First of all, I appreciate your presentation here. Of course, a lot of the things that you brought up are old situations. Why do you feel it's necessary to go from C1 to C3? I mean, what can you develop? If you could only develop a few things, why do you want to change from C1 to C3?
What I just mentioned, food service, because C1 doesn't cover that. It's kind of, I mean, I'm not up on the zoning laws, but it's kind of strange that you can have an office, a professional office, whether it's an attorney or an insurance agent in C1. You can't have food service. You can't have a little sandwich shop, a submarine shop. But if you go to C2, you can't have an office. You know, there's a jump in there where C2 doesn't cover some of the things. So when you go to C3, that covers an office, that covers food service. Right now, with the way my neighbor's property has come along, back then it was beautiful. Now I've got a tin building sitting next to me on the east side that Mr. and Ms. Oden built. I didn't get any notice that that was going to be built. I've got fence building equipment that's all over the back of his yard. I can't build a half story and have a window looking at the city of Yukon because I've got to look down at all of that fence building equipment. If you look at section 9, there's photos that shows the backyards of my neighbors. I don't think there's a valid argument that what I'm wanting to do is going to depreciate their property. It also shows the back of the Odens as to how it looks when people drive west on Northwest 10th, approach the intersection and approach my property. I don't think it looks good. I don't think it looks good for people that live in Yukon. I don't think it looks good for people that drive into Yukon. You can say, well, let's close his gate and you won't see that stuff, but the gate's metal and you can see right through it. So everybody that drives by there sees exactly what's in his backyard.
Okay. Is there anyone up here that would like to address this gentleman before I give the other people another opportunity to speak? Any questions?
I'm interested in the special warranty deed. Can you explain that?
Yes, sir. When I bought the property from It was actually, I think, KOYO Oil. That was a subsidiary of Conoco. In order for me to buy the property, they put a restriction on the property of what the uses they would not allow me to put in. And it shows those uses listed on that deed. So regardless of whether I or someone else wanted to, those uses can't be put in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, at least for the next 8 years, right?
20 years from 2002 December.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear of that.
Anyone else up here for right now for this? Okay, is there someone else that'd like to speak to this? Give you an opportunity at this time. Please state your name and address for the record when you get up here.
My name is Tom Dameron. I'm at 112 East Olympic, property just north of Dee's property there on the corner. His reference to my property is probably true, but I've spent quite a bit of money in the last couple of months trying to clean up and get everything done. We've run through some rough times. But the buildings on 10th Street, it's not just Bob's building that's there. There's several buildings down 10th Street on that property that used to be agricultural property there when
They had
were
an
given the opportunity to buy it.
Opportunity to buy it and did
Right.
so, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have that opportunity at the time because that was owned by that company. When DE purchased the property and changed it from what it was as agriculture to C1, we went through this same scenario, I believe. And at the time, it was decided that the C1 was all that small of property warranted. My major concern is not, at the time, the oil company owned that, and I was really not looking forward to a car wash being in our bedroom window, which is right on the south side of our property there. We've got a deck right there next to the fence, put a new fence in. DE's comment about that he contacted us, that kind of bothered me a little bit because the way the scenario played out was I called him to see if he could contribute to the fence since he owns the property. And that's when the idea came up of changing the zoning and all that. So, there was a few things during that interim that I didn't particularly care for either, but I don't need to go into that. I'm just concerned that the C3 opens it up to anything. He's had the property for sale for probably 10 years, my guess. Don't really know exactly. And if it had been C3, I'm sure he would have sold it for a commercial property, and opened it to anything. If he does that again, then it gives him the opportunity to sell it again. There's nothing stopping him from doing that. So my major concern is that it opens it to too many avenues of commercial property that they can put anything basically on C3 in there. So. And the sandwich shop and all that just contributes to the traffic on that corner, which is already pretty rough. So
Pretty intense.
yeah, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Oden?
I'm Margaret Oden at 116 East Olympic Drive. My apologies, DE. I did not, we carefully worded our letter and did not mean to offend you. I'm sorry. I did say increase his chances of selling, and I guess if I'd have checked, I should have said increase his chances of developing the property. But you have our letter, and that pretty much states our reasons that we're against the C3 is just because of the different uses involved. And yes, I mean, I'm against an on-queue. I haven't been notified of any rezoning if it's required.
It's in Oklahoma City.
Right,
They
but
don't
I
have to
still,
tell us
I mean,
anything.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, in response to that, I'm against that. And actually, however many years ago it was, 14, 15, that they put in the interstate, the exit ramp, we were opposed to that too. So, we have our home there, and there's things that, we don't want next to it. And, a law office or a insurance office there we could live with, but not a sandwich shop or any of the food service or any of the uses on C3. But Do you want to talk about? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this before? Okay, does the planning commission have anything that they want to talk about, discuss, ask questions on from any of the people that's been here? Okay,
I just thought of something.
okay.
At 116, now, I'm not familiar with exactly when this happened, but wasn't the back part of your lot right of way for Interstate 40 or something? How long have you had that?
2007, no, it's probably more like 2006 or 7, I don't know. About 7 or 8 years ago, Mr. Wright couldn't develop all of those lots behind all of our houses because of the right-of-way and the restricted no limits, no access, whatever that term is. And so he subdivided those lots, rezoned, replatted that so that each house was able to buy the property right behind them. So that property behind us is not in the right-of-way or the no access limited area. Does that answer your question?
So,
At the state highway, made those lots unusable basically because, on down, they made limits of no access. And he had originally intended to put, it's my understanding, he originally intended to put some duplexes in there with a street between the houses and the duplex. There would have been a street. But when they cut that land off for the highway, new exit and so forth, that made those lots unusable, so he turned around and sold them to the homeowner at a tremendous price, and they got to basically almost double the size of their lot.
Yep.
And if you notice, our lot is, I don't know if you drive by there, but our back lot is a little bit longer, deeper than the others because a access easement goes along behind all the others and then dead ends into ours. So ours is replatted a little bit deeper.
I just wasn't familiar when that happened.
Mitchell, on a restricted commercial C3, can you give us an explanation of what's the difference of that and a regular C3? Is there anything different?
You're talking about the restrictions on the property is what you're talking about.
Okay,
That's what you're talking about. He has some deed restrictions that's on this, is what you're talking about. So the deed restrictions are as to them on the property. So it's not something that we would enforce. It's something that's enforced on the property from the seller of the property originally.
so who would enforce those?
I would think it would be the grantor, would be the enforcement of that. So that'd been that KAYO oil company.
And they're no longer in existence,
I think there's still a company that's still in existence.
are they?
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else we want to talk about before I ask for a motion? Okay, do we have, someone, do you have, sorry, sir, do you want to make any last statement, Mr. Brower?
Not except that KAYO, my understanding is a subsidiary of Conoco. So whether I own the property, whether someone else owns the property, then it's Conoco that enforces the restriction.
Can you briefly tell what those restrictions are right quick?
I believe it, if I can remember the way it reads, it's a convenience store, car wash, any store that sells gasoline
Cannot go in there
cannot go in there for a period of 20 years.
for a period of 20 years. Mitchell, has the traffic commission taken a look at that corner? Could there be any left turns?
Typically, these do not go to the traffic commission. They are reviewed by city staff, and the recommendations come from them on these type of zoning issues.
Because I mean, if
Because it's
someone-
already platted, it already has the ingress and egress, it already has the utility easements. So it's assumed that it's already been reviewed, and at that time that it was platted, it was reviewed. This is just a zoning change, so this would not go back to the traffic commission.
Traffic Commission. Be very difficult if you're pulling out west there, to make a left-hand turn.
Whatever use would be in there would be the same, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Anything else? Okay, is someone care to make a motion up or down on this?
I would like to.
Okay.
Okay, in the case of the application for rezoning submitted by D.E. Jr. and Nikki Brower, we have read the staff report and received testimony at the public hearing. We find ourselves in agreement with staff findings, including all plans and attachments cited in the staff reports. I move that this item be recommended for approval to the City Council.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Further discussion. Call the roll, please.
Well, did you have something?
Did you have something, Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I've got some real problems with, he presented this really well, but most of the examples he gave, we've provided, or the developers have provided buffers between the C3 and the residential property. So before we had the master plan was probably developed. And I, for one, am just not comfortable with C3.
For instance, the Homeland, I was mayor at the time that Homeland was coming in, or at the time it was Albertsons. And the neighbors and that fence, they wound up having to provide a brick fence for the majority of that property, and that was quite odd. But that property did not have to be rezoned. It was already C3.
And the other thing, a lot of these examples, the property back, the residential property backing up to them was vacant when they were first considered to be zoned, so.
All right, any other discussion before we vote? So we have a motion and a second to approve the application. So a yes vote would mean voting for it, a no vote would mean voting against recommending approval to the city council. It still has to go to the city council.
Sure.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Chairman Taylor?
No.
Commissioner Hatley?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
No.
Commissioner Smystrela?
Yes.
Commissioner Bieber?
No.
Okay, the application failed to gain approval of the committee. It will be forwarded on to the city council, or will it, Mitchell? Forward on, or will we,
we'll work with him, because I'm sure he'll want to appeal it to the city council, so.
he'll appeal it to the city council. Mr. Attorney, is that the correct way to do it?
That is correct.
Okay, thank all of y'all for being here and your comments. We appreciate it. Very good. Thank you. That's well presented. Okay, item 4, I believe, is a request from Craft and Tull on the final plat for Frisco Ridge Phase 2, tract of land situated on the northwest quarter of Section 19, Township 12 North, Range 5 west of the Indian Meridian. And it is the land that is known as Frisco Ridge. It is at Frisco Road and Highway 66, containing 23.775 acres. We've got a quite extensive this and that's and all of the meets and bounds that I'm not going to read. Does anybody have a question as to what we're going to talk about, where it's located? If we do, we'll read all these in. It's over on the west side of town, up to Frisco Road and fronts on 66. Is that enough, Mr. Attorney?
I think that's good.
Okay, is there someone here that would like to speak to this?
Good evening, Phil Hagan with Craft and Toll Associates.
What was your name, sir?
Phil Hagan,
Thank you.
representing the applicant. We're in agreement with staff findings and agreement with the corrections they're suggesting, and just ask for your approval.
Is any of the other committee members have anything they'd like to talk about, ask.
Yeah, I would, of course. Phil, when we met over in Mitchell's office, I think, was it Doggett? Where we met and we looked at the
With the preliminary plat.
preliminary plat, as far as the drainage, it's all supposed to go down into that one, supposed to go down in that one, retention pond or detention pond. Has that changed any? I mean,
No.
everything is gonna go into that instead of into the creek?
Yeah, plans have been submitted and reviewed, and actually, they had a third-party engineer review the flood study, a specialist. And I think it's in your packet,
Yeah,
his
I didn't
findings.
understand it. I mean, when it's talking about the third,
Yes, we'll speak of this here in a second. If
Okay.
you would finish with Phil, what your questions are, and then we'll
okay.
start with this.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that it was still, nothing has
Nothing
changed
has
as far
changed,
as the direction and the flow from the streets and the drainage and stuff like that into the,
I have a
Retention
question
pond.
when you finish.
I'm finished.
Okay. Why are all these corrections not completed before you come before the planning commission?
This is the first time we seen their comments was just,
How come, Mitchell,
End of last
that these
week.
didn't get corrected prior
Well,
to the
We'll,
time?
we'll talk about that here in a second. There's a reason here. We were waiting for a study,
yeah,
so.
there's a delay in the review because of the third-party engineer finishing the study.
All right, does anybody else have a question for this gentleman? Okay, go ahead, Mitchell.
The staff at the time was, we was, told to not review any of the attachments or the submittals until after we found out what the flood study showed that, Mark Utley has completed. After we got the flood study back from Mark Utley, that's when we did the review. It was a very short time window. If you'll look, there is a flood study from the third party, Utley and Associates, that's stamped. There's an executive summary. I'll read that to you if you'd like for me to.
Go ahead.
New hydrological and hydraulic calculations have been performed on the North Canadian River and tributary sea of the North Canadian River. The results confirm the existing width of the North Canadian River floodplain. The results show the existing and proposed residential development upstream of Main Street will not increase flow downstream, confirming the detention pond designs and the addition. The observed siltation downstream of the railroad on tributary C is likely the result of years of silt disposition, originally from the North Canadian River overtopping the levee. Further deposits from tributary C likely occurred once the drainage path was obstructed. The effects, if any, of the past upstream construction on this siltation cannot be determined. And if you will look, there is other backup information that's been included with that. And there is actually a project location map, and if you'll look, it's very specific of the subject study area. We do have a complete flood study for those that would like to review it. This is the study that was presented to us by Utley and Associates to show that they have reviewed and looked at it very closely. And I stand for any other questions you may have to this.
This was an independent study, independent of the city?
This was a third party, independent of the city.
Who paid for it?
The city ended up paying for this.
Really? Developer should have paid for it.
This is one of those things we wanted to make sure that everybody that was concerned had a third party that was involved in it, because the developer did meet the requirements of the city ordinance at the time that he submitted his application. And we wanted to give you a foundation to be able to make a recommendation.
The tributary C, where is that located on this map?
It's in the subject area. It's not, if you'll look, it's in that subject area.
Okay, so that's what I didn't understand. I didn't
Yeah.
understand where that was.
Well, the whole report's here, like I said.
Are we platting the remainder of Frisco Ridge? Is that what you're asking for tonight, or is there still more to come?
There's still several phases to come. There's probably 4 additional phases.
And those are all to the south?
To the south and to the west, yeah. There's a drainage way that kind of splits the property. The
Yes.
west side will be future phases, all the way over to Frisco.
So this is the north half of the drainage area that we're talking about tonight?
This is the east half.
'Cause
what
it's
you're talking about.
East and south.
You're talking about east of the tributary, right?
East?
Well,
I'm
not-
talking, are we fronting on 66 tonight? Is that what we're talking about?
No.
No, it's behind the first phase. to the
Okay,
south.
so it's back behind there. Okay.
But it's within that tributary that Mark Utley reviewed. So he studied the entire tributary. We're just one small basin.
23 acres, how many houses you plan to put in there?
Like 89, I believe 89, 88.
89 was what you said last time.
85, I think, is what the count ended up being, because there was some adjustment for lots to allow for construction of houses. So they had to adjust a few lots, if I remember right.
Does anything have to be done to that drainage area?
At
Or-
this time, no.
No, not at this time, not
This time.
deepening or
No, they're
anything?
not constructing anything in the drainage way. They are constructing some detention ponds,
Just
my understanding.
just outside of them. They'll
Yes.
discharge into the drainage way, but the drainage way it's controlled by the Corps of Engineers, so without going through their permitting process, we couldn't do anything with that. So we're leaving its natural state.
Okay, I think the last time this came before us, we voted this down, correct, or no? When it went to the city council?
Yeah, I believe your recommendation for the preliminary plat was no.
No.
Was not to
Correct.
approve it.
We're requesting that you give your approval tonight to what the staff has recommended.
They made the changes that I believe are good as far as the drainage goes.
Do you?
Because before, the first time they didn't show that. And so Phil and others had gotten back together and they had developed what I consider was a good drainage. I wish the previous developer would have done that.
And so all of these notes and comments and corrections will have to be completed prior to the city council meeting? Yes or no?
They will have to be corrected before they're submitted to the city council.
I mean, just so I'm clear, there's like a street name and and one note needs to be added.
That's correct.
That's the only corrections.
Well, some things with the plat and so forth.
Deleting the notes on the signature page.
Right.
Are you satisfied, Cindy, with all these requirements?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions up here?
Yeah, I have
Um,
one.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, Mitch, looking at the results, tributary C, make sure I was looking at this right. Historic, existing, and future, looks like the flow rate's gonna go down even after the existing, if we put this next addition in. Is that because they're putting more ponds in, or am I reading this?
That is something you'd have to refer to the engineer.
Okay.
Phil can be able to answer those questions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because of detention ponds, the peak flow will actually be less after development.
All right, thanks. That's all I had.
Okay. Any others? All right, I will entertain a motion, up or down. Anyone care to make a motion?
Go ahead.
I'll make motion. In the case of the application for the final plat on Frisco Ridge Phase 2 as submitted by Kraft and Tull and Associates, we have read the staff report and received testimony in the public hearing. We find ourselves in agreement with the staff findings, including all plats and attachments cited in the staff report. I move that this item be recommended for approval to the city council with revisions as noted in the staff report with the following conditions. Change the name of Rick Track Road to Hobo Street. consistent with this plat phase one connection, add the following notes to plans. Developer of this plat shall incorporate handicap ramps in the sidewalks of all corner lots. All easements shown outside the plat boundary are made a part of this plat unless labeled as given by separate instrument. Delete the plat notes from the signature page.
Is that all of it, Cindy?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the final plat of this phase of Frisco Ridge. Any other discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Bieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Slanstrella,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Hatley,
Yes.
Chairman Taylor.
Yes. Okay, is there any other business to come before this body tonight?
We have no new business.
Cindy, do you have anything?
No.
Mr. Attorney?
No, sir.
Okay, then, when's our next meeting? This meeting will stand, this committee will stand in adjournment till our next meeting, June 9th.